National Assembly. Well, let's now move to our Abuja studio where a civil rights activist, Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu, joins us. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Nigeria is in the in the eyes of the world for so many reasons, one of which is the kind of comment that is caught on tape from the British Prime Minister David Cameron. But one we wonder, from the kind of comment or the reaction we got from the Transparency International, is it fair to refer to Nigeria as a fantastically corrupt nation, especially coming from the British Prime Minister?
Well, I think the distinguished senator made the point about how undiplomatic that Fox Pulse on the part of Mr. Cameron is. So I don't think that it's important to belabor that anymore. What's important is that whatever we did to bear this ungodly and ugly toga of being a corrupt nation, we will need to begin to introspect a little bit more. By that I mean that yes, it's coming from there, but you can't deny the fact that we have earned that toga in the way we have conducted, first and foremost, our attitude to the public till and our common patrimony. So we need to, yes, we've been out naked in the market square. People are telling us we are naked. We can shout the much we want, but it's important that we now find something to cover our shame. That's one point to be made. The second point to be made is that it's unhistoric. It's a slight on history for Britain, knowing the nature of plunder and that they did in Nigeria historically, in terms of how they raped the resources of the country, how they shipped able-bodied young people to plantations in Europe and America. It does not come. It's not fit for a country like Britain to talk about corruption. And Transparency International has made that point that, look, if you don't provide the safe haven, if your islands don't provide the safe haven, if you don't become a complicit arbiter, I mean, somebody who abets and you are also colluding with the stealing elite of our country, some of these things will not happen. So that's two perspectives to intervene in what's happening. But more importantly is for us to introspect and say, look, what brought us to this point that we are? First and foremost is an elite class that doesn't have shame, that continues to, parade themselves nakedly, behave in a manner that is uncivilized, that is primitive, and doesn't want anybody to call attention to that. I think that the president has responded quite clearly, but it's important for us, after driving away that fox, to come back home and talk to the hen.
All right. When we wonder, of course, what Transparency International says, the chairman of the managing director of Transparency International has come out to say that there's no doubt that they've had high levels of corruption in Nigeria and Afghanistan, but the current leaders of both countries have shown commitment to change the situation. He also says that the London Anti-Corruption Summit provides an opportunity for all the countries attending the meeting to sign up to a new era. He says, and I quote, this affects the UK as much as other countries. We should not forget that by providing a safe haven for corrupt assets, the UK and its overseas territories and crown dependencies are a big part of the world's corruption problem. But at this point, a lot of people had called the action or the comment a sign of hypocrisy on the side of the man who made the comment. But in the real sense of it, in what the President Muhammadu Buhari says, what can you take away from that concerning the situation we currently face in the country?
The president took the battle back to the British people and said, look, if you don't provide safe haven, if you don't provide some support for those who steal our common resources, they will not succeed. That what is important also is that some of these resources that we're looking for is helping your own economy, it's running your industry, is helping your own citizens. So and pauperizing the citizens where these resources are taken away from. So it's important that Britain understands that it is time to bring back those funds for the development of the country where they are taken away from. That's the import. But you see, conferences, as important as they are, will lay a framework. But what is important in Nigeria's fight against corruption is to ensure that you have strong citizen buy-in and oversight of the anti-corruption fight. Otherwise, it will continue to be this Buhari thing, Buhari's fight against corruption, and I don't think that is important. We need to begin to look at the institutional capacity and competence that is needed to fight this corruption. Do we have it? We need to also begin to address our judiciary. How much of this slow prosecution process, the lingering nature of cases in courts interminably, what do we need to do to quicken this process? The senator talked about the Administrative of Justice 2015 Act, which is intended to help to move this forward. But I am suggesting that we perhaps need some 3 months of televised, anti-corruption trial, where the judges, everybody will sit down and we can bring all these cases and bring them to a logical conclusion once and for all, while we start talking about how to improve, the infrastructure, improve the capacity, and improve the competencies of the anti-corruption agencies.
All right.
You have ICPC, you have EFCC, you have TUGA, you have the Special Anti-Fraud Unit of the Nigerian Police. All these institutions working optimally will address the issue of corruption quite frontally. And much importantly is also to start an orientation in which we can begin to have a naming and shaming system where people who commit corruption and corrupters themselves can find no solace with citizens, with the media, and remove atavistic interpretations to what that means for people.
All right. Yeah, let's now listen to an industrial economist, Mr. Folusha Phillips, who spoke exclusively to Channels Television on this matter and what he thinks the comment brings to our PR as a nation.
I think, let's be very, very honest, these comments go on all the time. And what has been unfortunate in his situation is that comments like this that are normally behind closed doors was actually done and caught on camera. But I think where I stand to feel quite disappointed with Cameron is the fact that he knows very well that Nigeria is making a very, very conscious and literally aggressive with ourselves again. We know that there's a high element of truth in that statement. But to be on the verge of conducting a meeting, a gathering that is going to be focused on such an issue, and to make that statement shows the kind of bias that exists before the commencement of that meeting. So I think it was very unbecoming of a head of state to be even talking to the Queen of England. And if you listen to that conversation, you'll notice that the Archbishop actually commented and said that, the situation is changing, that the new leader is a different leader, and such a thing really shouldn't be said. What I also want to add is that the United Kingdom, Europe, and most of the Western world have been recipients of the money that has been stolen from a lot of African countries. And it's so ironic that money that is stolen is kept in their bank accounts. The amount of money that goes to the bank accounts allows them to charge very, very little interest to people who want to borrow. When it is time for us to carry out exercises, we go back and we borrow money from them, which they now give to us as loans and support, when really it is our funds. There's no way the level of corruption and the ability to use their banks as safe havens for stolen money could have happened if they refused to receive such amounts of money. So I think to a great extent the Western world itself is extremely culpable in this issue. And the frustration that we now go through and the very, very tedious process we go through to recover monies that they know is stolen is another source of frustration. So I think the Western world and the people like Camerons of this world are speaking from both sides of their mouths, and to a great extent they've been acting if I say with all due respect, a rather irresponsible statement.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, you see that, seeing that industrial economist, Mr. Felicia Phillips. Mr. Ezenwanwago, to round up the program now, what do you make of what Mr. Felicia Phillips says and how we need to move forward on this anti-corruption fight?
I didn't see quite a lot of difference between what Mr. Felicia Phillips said and what we had, both myself and the senator had pointed to. Like I said, it's more important now to bring back the benefits of that conference back home in terms of what is discussed. What is being agendaed in that conference has to be practicalized at home. But more importantly is to make the point that June 10 last year, the President Obama invited our president to the US, and this was part of the conversation. And as we speak now, America has not brought back any money to Nigeria. Britain is unlikely because some of these monies also have some banker and their client relationship. So we need to strengthen that the instruments that make it difficult for these monies to come back.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Ezenwanwago. We need to go now. Many thanks for talking to us on the program. And that's our program tonight. Many thanks for being such a good company. I'm Sean Kimali. Bye for now.